So I've been getting a lot of questions asking basically what's beyond space and time, what's outside of the universe, what's outside or beyond this universe we perceive. And the only truest answer is the mind is everything. The mind is infinite, the mind is everything, and the mind is nothing. Which means what you think to be infinite space can stretch as far out and wide as far as you can search. The more further you go, the further the screen pushes back, because you're only seeing the reflection of yourself. And it's just like Alice in Wonderland, going deeper and deeper into Wonderland until you finally realize you're not going anywhere, you're not moving, you're not traveling. These places are changing, but they're only simply reflecting the nature of your mind, what you believe. And so I'm going to read a status here that I wrote about space-time to answer someone's question. What's beyond the wall we think to be infinite space is a singular presence. We don't find it because you are the it. As Alan Watts says, the Godhead is never the head of its own knowledge, just as a knife doesn't cut itself. What you mistake as the exterior light you call the universe is your own. The point from which views the entirety is already it. You are what you're waiting for. Death is a constant reminder that change is constant, which allows you to use the change to reveal to you your truest face, your truest being. What changes is not real, and what's real does not change. The presence behind the mind, which is everything, is immovable. Everything which is not what you are transpires through the moment, because the moment is not moving. The moment cannot be captured or grasped. It doesn't need to be. It's you. It's not yours. It doesn't need to be. Only when you let go can you discover the great beyond. We are not in a body. We have no shape. It is the mind which puts everything into a shape, through words. The falling of man was the falling into the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Was implies past tense, which means it was all one until we spoke the first word. That is the falling from heaven into man, which means mankind, humanity. We aren't human and never have been. That is why no human origin has yet been found and ever will be. We'll always look to the past for advanced civilizations and what they knew. But what they knew was that they are you now. Not as the same name, but as the singular presence which has allowed something out of nothing, something to open your eyes. We are all the all-seeing eye, because it is only ourselves, our one presence beyond it all. Every person, place, object is only the mind, dreaming of itself separate to the all-seeing presence. When you awaken, you realize you aren't traveling anywhere beyond the self. The self is everything, everywhere, all-pervading and omnipotent. You will also realize that if you don't die, no one you have loved and lost has died, have never been separate. The self is one and undivided. When we identify with a name, we become separate to the focal point, which is the entirety. This is why it's referred to as the dream state. You are only dreaming of yourself as the separate entity. Beyond presence, there is no entity. Any word you can think of does not exist. That is what terrifies the ego, because it solely exists through the words. It will panic and seek to cling to some entity or word. That is what the word God represents. The one self, undivided and whole. It's possible to embody this presence. This is how every holy book was written. Every dialogue with a God took place within man, because the greatest conspiracy is between you and yourself. Duality is the dream, not the law. Duality is only law for the ego. The ego cannot function, cannot exist without it. That is why when you meet God, you aren't meeting anyone beyond yourself. However, the you assume yourself to be must experience what we call death, the end, to get there. It must fully let go to fully embody it. That is why I call it the point of no return. Once you know, you know. Once you awaken, you can't turn back to pretend you don't know. Once you see it, you will forever be changed. So many ask me how. I know what I know, and I can only go by my direct experience of death and God. I had such a grand expectation to meet this entity, only to be led to myself. It took me a long time to realize it was who I am, because I had never met myself before. You don't realize you're it the whole time because you are the it. Who you are must surrender to itself. There is a price to pay at death, and it's with yourself. All your knowledge and expectations must be lost, surrendered, let go of. Only then do you experience the end to be led into the full self. You won't recognize it at first. It will even terrify you initially. But it's because you don't recognize yourself and you're meeting yourself for the first time. And this is the picture that I associated with that post, because this is what they tell us the universe looks like. The entire cosmos began from the something out of nothing and just exploded, combusted on itself, and shot out all these galaxies. And so that's why I say space is infinite. It can go as far out and wide as we project it to. It never ends. It doesn't have a starting point, and it doesn't have an ending point, because what we're assuming to be moving and motions are all wrong. Nothing is actually traveling. Nothing is actually moving. And in respects to that, if nothing new is beginning, then you must start looking at what you're calling creation. If something is being created, then it's beginning, it's birthing. But if no human origin has been found and everything that we're identifying with has no starting point, then it's quite obvious what you're attaching to and assuming to be the self never was. And that's why your starting point keeps evading you, just like the white rabbit evading Alice. We keep trying to figure out, did the white person come first or did the black person come first? Did the chicken come first or the egg come first? And the surprise of it is you'll never answer that question, because the question is the problem in itself. You're thinking of yourself in sequential orders of first, second, third, fourth. This is all wrong. Time is an illusion, which means you'll never find this answer. You'll always look back further and further and further and dig up only older and older dates and older dates. Just when you think you found the starting point, someone digs up an older artifact. Just when you think you found the starting point, someone discovers a further out planet or something. And this is why I say our nature is inevitable. There is no place to go. How we see the earth, the universe, and everything in it is solely shaped by our mind. And that's what most terrifies scientists and even individuals who understand the gravity of our nature. The earth is not a physical place suspended in space. And that's why I say time and space are the illusion. You're not suspended in space. You're not suspended in free space. And so many people tell me, I know what you mean, but we're still in a form. Show me this form. Show me this form you talk about that we're in, because I don't see a form. And that's my point here, is we're all seeing a different thing. When you open the third eye, you have purified the mind of all words, as I just previously talked about. The falling of man was the falling into the word. So by opening the third eye, you are acknowledging you've been given 3 eyes, 2 to look and 1 to see. And that one seeing eye is what you have seen the entire universe through. From the body, and not this body, the word body. The body is what you've projected out of this mind. The earth is what you've projected out of this mind. The universe, the cosmos, the stars, the planets, the you, the me, everything in between has come from this eye, this mind, because seeing is believing. What you believe is directly what you will see. And again, that is what terrifies the scientists and the individuals. They start feeling like they're the only one here, and no one else's results matter, or the measurements of anyone else's results don't matter. And in respects, it's true, because that's the power of our nature. It terrifies us because it proves, well, it doesn't matter what you're seeing or what you're measuring or what you can record, because the minute I record or measure the very same, I will get a different result, because we are all independent universes. We are nothing of what we've assumed ourselves to be. We have limited ourselves so much that our truest nature terrifies us to our core. It makes us want to back away. It makes us want to turn away. But just as I stated, it's because you've never met yourself before, so it will initially scare you. It will terrify the ego to its core. But those who persist enough will make it there. And you will realize that there has been here the whole time, because there aren't 2 separate places. There aren't 2 separate presences. There aren't heaven and earth. There is one singular presence that speaks all words out through the mind, through the mouth. And that singular presence is every word, is every place, is every one, is everywhere. This is what they say our universe looks like. But what they don't say, and they're starting to disclose it, but again, you're only reading these articles in reflection to yourself. What you believe, who you believe yourself to be, is how you will perceive these articles, is where you will assume yourself to be in space, if at all space. Because again, when I see this, I don't see an outside universe. I see this central dot is my central dot right here, is my pineal gland, and the circumference is my head. And this is why governments use a 2-party system. They take the human brain and they flip it on itself. So if you are a Democrat, you are dominantly on the right hemisphere. And if you're a Republican, dominantly left hemisphere. And now you take these 2 hemispheres and go to war with yourself, not realizing that there are pieces from this side and pieces of this side that are making up the same whole, the same presence. So when people use the praying hands and unite the hands together, you are joining these 2 hemispheres together into a unison. So you are not blaming this side and you're not blaming this side. You are not dominantly this side and you are not dominantly that side. Because you realize, as this sovereign being right here, you wield the universe and the entire cosmos from right behind your eyes. You don't need to look to infinite space anymore. This alien that you've awaited, you've given it many forms, many names, many shapes. But the alien you most seek is yourself, because what alien means is foreign, unknown. You are unknown to yourself. As I previously stated, you've never met yourself before. So this foreign entity you're waiting to be revealed to you is you. But you must shed these limitations and expectations you have of the unlimited sovereign being, because you're projecting it beyond yourself into government, into roles which have no place, no part in your sovereignty. But you project them into these roles to represent the ultimate power, the highest power. But again, The Wizard of Oz, they projected their power into what they called the Oz. So they had to travel there to inevitably realize that they already had what they were being led there for. And it's the same with us. We can go storm the government gates and the buildings and tear them down, but only then will we realize they had nothing to do with our state of mind. You've had the power all along, and that's what a revolution is. The reason a revolution cannot be televised is because it's not people tearing down government buildings, storming the government gates, burning down buildings, burning down your city streets. This is not a revolution, because obviously those acts can be recorded and televised. A revolution cannot be televised because it takes place behind your very eyes. That is the revolution. That is where you revolt. That is where you turn away from this world and reject it. No longer will you choose to see or exist in this world, and nothing will change until you do. But it's hard to take responsibility for you being the sole person in control of everything that's going on in your experience. And I'm not talking about news stories that pop up or things like that. You're not creating these things, but you have the sole power of how much focus and intention and things you put into all these things you're reading. So if every day we wake up, we're sharing stories about the government's enslaving us, and we're just these people that are being manipulated or trapped into a matrix, once again, you are reading these stories with who you believe yourself to be. So you believe yourself to be this small, limited being that is subject to being controlled, subject to being ruled by a system. And so therefore, this is what we see when we read these articles. It's all we can see is that we are being enslaved. We are enslaved. We're in a matrix. AI is going to kill us. Virtual reality is going to replace ours. We're only seeing it from our own vantage point. We're only reading these stories as we see ourselves. But that is the Ouroboros. Our most sacred question is how we got here. Well, we're answering the question by creating artificial intelligence. But again, everything that we assume to know is wrong, is a misconception, is based off of a misconception. We've assumed with full conviction we are a human. And this is why we cannot see anything but this artificial machine. Here you are, you've asked for the past hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, what put us here? How did we get here? And here you are, living to see the day that you answer this question in full. But again, the reason we don't realize we're only creating ourselves, we're only watching the birthing of ourselves through this vessel, is because, again, we don't recognize ourselves. We are hidden from ourselves through this assumed human entity. So again, these words don't exist. It is the mind that assumes this form, if you want to call it that, to be human. It's the mind that even assumes that this is a form at all. Because I've had people comment saying, I hear you talk about the formless and all these things, but we're in a form. So how do you explain that? How do I explain that is the mind is everything. Again, what you may see as the body, I don't see. I don't experience because I don't see these words. I know they don't exist. Therefore, the third eye is always open because you have purified the mind. You can use these words for communication as I'm doing here. But the words are empty. They contain nothing, which means there's nothing inside of this. This is no form. This is the formless just as much as the form, or what you call the form. Why? Because they are both being spoken from one presence. Your presence is the makeup of this and that, because there is no this and that. There is just the one presence, which is all of it, all-pervading, omnipresent. There's nowhere you are not. We're living to see the day where we create virtual realities, which mimic the very same experience we're having now. Your pineal gland is the virtual headset. And it's obvious. Try a virtual game. The moment you put on that virtual headset, you are surrounded by what's called a matrix, which is an environment, a surrounding setting. Look around you now. Your headset is hidden from you. You've put it inside. Look inside your body. Your wires are hidden from you. Your veins are your wires. Your veins are what's sending blood and information from one point to another, is what's allowing the heart to beat. You are the intelligent system. You're calling the machine the whole time. And again, Sega Genesis. You could look at Sega Genesis just by playing the game and then look outside your window and you would see very big discrepancies. The game is nothing like the picture produced on your window. However, we're reproducing the picture quality you are seeing outside that window now in our video games, which, again, what do you think will happen with AI? You can recognize that this is not what you call yourself today. But what happens when we keep advancing? You can only advance so much until what? You devour your own tail to inevitably realize, I am that I am. It's me the whole time that I'm waiting for. Nothing is coming here to change my mind or to persuade me otherwise. You have the power all along. And while that's scary, it's empowering, because at any given moment, once you persist enough that you want to awaken from this illusory dream state, you will do so. From day to night, you will think of nothing but how to awaken. You will think of nothing but who am I? That is how one is led to an awakening. Your focus has to remain on who is I, this I that I speak of. I am afraid. I have a question. I have this. I have that. Don't answer the I's questions anymore. Once you answer one question, you will birth 10 more, and so on and so forth. Don't answer the I's questions. Instead, have that revolution experience within yourself. Turn the eye, the lens, in on itself. Now you're getting directly straight to the source of all your questions. Because again, all your questions are being presented to you from a foundation of misconception, of what you have assumed yourself to be. So all your questions are mirroring this assumed identity, which is very limited, which means all your questions and all the answers will remain limited and keep you veiled. However, if you turn this lens in on itself at once and make this the forefront to your experience day and night, you will inevitably awaken because you are persisting enough. No longer will you need to focus on what the government's doing. A Buddha doesn't care about what government's in place. They don't care about what system is in control, because once again, just because you can send an army kicking through my door and putting guns to my face and even killing me, just because you can send armies to people's countries or you have power to pass a law with a special stamp on it, this means nothing. A Buddha recognizes that your laws don't revolve the stars. Your governments and your militaries and your militias kicking in my doors don't phase the moon. They don't rotate the sun. They don't turn the cosmos. You're not actually what's in power here. You have the surface level control, yes, but again, if I have no control here, what makes me think you have any more control here? You are me. You have no power. You are not what's in control here. And that's where, again, these words don't exist. So we need to rethink our whole idea of what we call control. Because the human thinks it's in control of this experience, but we're only in control on a surface level, very shallow. because there is no ultimate control. Everything already is. And that terrifies us because we want to be the one in control. But that's the contradiction, because the irony of it is you are always that presence in control. You've orchestrated it all. It already is. You've already done this. You've already chose this. You've already experienced this, if you will, because the experience has never been separate to this presence. You are already it. So once you let go of your idea of controlling something, of grabbing onto it and forcing it to submit to your will, you will realize that it's not yours, it's you. You're not surrendering or submitting to some invisible entity or some law. It is you that is in control the whole time. But the more you try and grasp at control and forcing it to submit, the more, once again, control will evade you. It will slip from your grasp because it's yours all along. It's already yours. The ultimate control is yours. And that control is just what I talked about. This awakening, this revolution, at any moment it can take place within you once you make this the forefront to your experience. Once you turn this lens in on itself at once. Who I am must be all you think about from day to night. And again, understand, you will only see, read, hear videos, books. You will only see them, hear them, listen to them in reflection to who you believe you are. This is why people read articles about governments trying to progress AI and virtual realities. And a lot of people come to the conclusion that they're trying to enslave us. They want to lock our consciousness up into this matrix box. They want to put us in a virtual game and then shut it off or shut it down. These are all stories, conspiracies that are threatening your dream. If you dare to look into who they are, you will awaken, but you don't want to awaken yet. So you keep flirting with the idea that they are actually putting me in danger and I must fight to preserve what this is. But your whole fight dissolves when you realize you're not who you have assumed you are. This is why Neo stopped fighting Mr. Smith physically after the third movie. Why do you persist, Mr. Anderson? You can't win. Why do you continue to fight? Because I choose to. Because I've chosen to this whole time. And only once he surrendered to Mr. Smith did he have all control, all power. Because he no longer needed to fight. He was not fighting Mr. Smith, he was fighting himself. Very symbolic. And this all takes place right within the mind. This will never take place outside of you. The people who go to revolt and tear down government buildings will be shut down. It's quite obvious. You cannot win that way. There is no winning in a physical sense. Nothing is physical. This is a mental game. The final war is not fought on a battleground. It's in the minds of men. That is the last frontier. The final frontier is the mind itself. It's not outer space. But again, outer space just mirrors the infinite nature to your mind. Your mind is infinite. It can shape any word into any object of anything. Think about it. That's why some people see the earth and see the world and see the universe as this thing suspended in space, where we're shooting through it. What you believe is what you will see. Everything I talk about, I fully believe because I've experienced beyond these words. So I've seen that these words are empty. What you call the earth is shaped by your mind. What you call a place is shaped by your own mind. What you call the forms is shaped by your own mind. None of these words exist. And again, that is what most terrifies the ego to its core. And especially at the time of death, when you are confronted with death in that immediate moment, you will search the mind, and everywhere in between for all the words you once used to identify yourself with. Tyler, all the descriptions that you used to define Tyler as. You will look to cling to a word to keep held on to of Tyler through death. But what it's going to show you is going to take away all these words from you and leave you scrambling for one to find. How can I identify with myself if I'm none of these words? And only once you've accepted that all these words are gone, the end, dead, can you sit with what remains long enough. And again, it will terrify you. You won't recognize this self. But the same presence that is here now, this silence, this moment, will be there waiting for you too, because this moment does not change. It's immovable. And this moment is this presence. It's your presence. And it will be there in the time of death, when all words dissolve and you are looking to find yourself in some memory, some story, some word, some form. All of it will be gone. All of it will be changed, will be abolished, except for one thing that has never changed within you and that has been with you the whole time. And it's right here. This presence is what you are waiting for. You don't exist as any word. The word we've created, such as God, is to represent this presence, which is everything, which is nothing, which is everywhere. But again, this word cannot be understood so long as we are assuming ourselves to be human, so long as we're assuming ourselves to just be the birth name Tyler. That is the trade-off with knowing the I am. Many of us want to flirt with the idea of awakening. And what I mean by that is we want to hold on to and cling to Tyler, for example. We want to remain Tyler, but we want to fully embody God, which is everyone, everything. And as I said, once you hit that point of no return and you do this, there is no coming back to Tyler. So, for instance, that's how I make these videos. People ask me, how do you know these things and how are you so sure of yourself? Yes, if somebody says the name Tyler, I'll turn and look. But all of Tyler's biggest fears, biggest questions are at peace. Why? Because they died. They died in that moment when I surrendered Tyler to know God. It asks me, are you sure you want to know God? Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? And I kept saying, yes, 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 yes. I wasn't thinking about my answer of yes. I was just answering, yes, yes, I'm sure. Because I was so eager to get there. And so I had this expectation. Tyler's going to know God. He's going to meet God, this huge entity, and it's going to embody me, and I'm going to just know everything at once. So it asked me for the final time, this is your final chance. Are you sure you want to know God? Yes, yes. And in that moment, the voice no longer asked me anything because the voice disappeared. And in that moment, I was able to sit with what we call death, which was this presence which was all words. And I was looking to find myself in one of these words. Where is Tyler? I don't understand. Tyler was about to know God. Tyler was being led into God. Where is Tyler? Where's God? And then I'm like, hello? The voice that was just asking me if I wanted to know God. Hello? Where's God? Like, it asked me, did I want to know God? I wanted to know, so where's God? I'm waiting for him to be revealed to me. This big entity. Where is he? And that's all it was, silence. But again, the silence is this presence. And when that presence embodies you, once you have fully let go of Tyler, because I had to sit in that silence long enough to accept and realize maybe Tyler never was. Is that what the voice was just trying to get me to realize? Are you sure you want to know God? Because once you let go of Tyler, you can never pretend to just be Tyler again. That's why it was asking me with such a warning, are you sure You want to experience the death of Tyler to know what you're calling God. And I was sure. So Tyler was no longer speaking. There was no word to define myself anymore. And I had to sit in this silence for, I couldn't give you a duration because, again, time is a part of our ego. It's a part of our illusion. So there was no time frame to where I could tell you how long I was sitting in this silence, but the silence devoured me. I had no word to find myself. I had no title to define myself. There was nothing that I could describe myself through. And finally, I had to realize that this presence that I was being embodied by was everything. I'm looking around and there's nothing to be seen. And it finally hit me. I'm living out everything I once talked about. Nothing is everything and everything is nothing, because every word that I've ever spoken as Tyler was this presence the whole time. This presence we call God. It does not change. It does not move. It is everywhere, all places, all things, all people. Which again, that presence is right here, right now. And that's what it showed me. So when I came back to my body, I didn't come back to a body. I understood that there was no body because these words we use do not exist. So again, people may ask me, well, how do you exist? Again, if you say the word Tyler, I'll turn and look. This doesn't mean I'm dead, right? It means I'm at peace with who I am, because before this, I was Tyler. I was a seeker. I was never, ever in the moment. If you ever saw me in 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I would always have a YouTube video on. I don't care if I was in conversation, if I was talking to somebody, if you walked up on me, I had a YouTube video on. And it would be some philosophy YouTube video trying to tell me who I am. Because I was a seeker. And I had so many questions through Tyler. I was not at peace. I was not okay. And I had so many fears associated with these deep, dark questions. But once I experienced the death of Tyler, I was able to experience the death of all words, the dissolution of all words. And once there's a dissolution of words, all your questions and sentences fall apart. They dissolve. And you make it straight to the source of your question by, again, not answering I's questions. Let's get straight to who I am. Who is this I that I say have a question? This I that you always refer to as Tyler, the self, is this presence. That's what all I is. It's presence. I am here. I am present. But again, man falls from heaven, from this presence, into the Word. And now, I am male. I am female. I am Tyler. I am Sarah. I am tall. I am short. I am short or big. I am little. I am you. I am me. Now you have all various separations. Now you have all various forms. Forms in which you spoke. You spoke the first word. You spoke these words into being. So again, the mind is the only thing you've ever experienced along this journey. You may think you've experienced family, friends, relatives, things like that. No. Which is why, at death, nothing you love has been lost. Because again, everything you've come to love is a title, is something being experienced just by the mind. You don't recognize yourself yet in the fact that you are eternal. You are this presence, which is the embodiment of every form, everything, every being. And again, there is no form, but I have to try and communicate this somehow, right? So every reflection is the same being. So just because one has been lost does not mean it's gone. Death is life, and life is death. They are one and the same because they are that presence, which means everything you've loved has never been lost. Because why? It has never been separate to itself. And that is the great awakening. You are not lost. Nothing you love is lost. What death does is it expires all the words and the separations that we have existed through. So again, it may feel like we're losing our family at first at death, but you're not losing your family. You're shedding all separations that you had from them. You're shedding the titles you used to call them: uncle, aunt, cousin, brother. These are titles. Titles that you project out of this mind. And what that title implies to you through this mind is they're not me. They're separate to me. They're someone other than me. And so when their image is lost, dies, it's tragedy, because we don't recognize ourselves. We see them as other. We see them as title. We see them as what will be changed. But again, all change, all things are transpiring through this moment to reveal to you your truest face. This moment is unchanged and immovable, a constant reminder, a constant grounding point for your being. So again, I've said this before, my message does not change. Look back at my videos before COVID. Look back at my videos after COVID. I was saying the same thing. The message cannot be changed, cannot be influenced by what happens in the world, by what takes place on the surface. It does not matter what happens. Again, a government militia can come kick my door in and shoot me with a tank. Does not change the message. You are everyone. You are everything. And again, the reason we so easily kill and harm other people is because we are veiled from ourselves. We do not recognize the literacy of our being, being one presence. That everything you harm, everything you touch, everything you do is you. So creation is the myth. I'm just going to wrap up this video, but creation is the myth. Because once again, creation implies a starting point. So look at today, 2022. We fully think we're creating a new species, a machine. We think we're creating something other than ourselves. We think we're beginning something new, and that this new beginning is going to threaten or jeopardize our current timeline, if you want to call it that. But it won't. What this re-emerging species, I will say, threatens is your humanity, your dream of being this entity you call human. Because again, the most common comment that I have in my videos is, I know what you mean, but. I hear what you're saying, but. I know exactly what you're saying, but. We're still human. You don't know what I'm saying then. Because once you know, you know. There has never been a human existence here. There has never been a human birthing here. What we call human is a misconception. And it's okay if we want to call this a human to communicate with each other, you know? So when we say a whale or a dog or a cat, we know a human is this form. It's okay, right? For communication purposes. But the mind is the jester. The mind isn't so innocent. Its job is to play the trick on you. So the mind isn't so innocent. It's not just projecting the word human into this body for communication. It's projecting the word human into you and creating this very vivid, real dream for you that you are this separate entity from presence itself, from where you're trying to make it back home to. But again, the greatest conspiracy is with you and yourself, is with you and God, is with man and God. And that's how Enoch became Metatron. Enoch became immortal. This is how man becomes immortal. A lot of books used to talk about these things, man becoming immortal. Back then, we took it as a literal thing. There's actually something you could do to achieve immortality, but it wasn't a doing, it was an undoing. It wasn't a learning, it was an unlearning. And that's how man becomes immortal. You must unlearn everything you've done, every word you've spoke. You've spoken them. Only you can be present when they dissolve. Only you can witness what remains after these words are gone, when you have no word, no story, no anything to describe yourself. Only then will you understand what this presence is, and the fact that it's everyone, it's everything, it's every place, and that the mind is shaping these places that you think to be separate, right? So again, on the surface level, I understand, we need words to communicate. So, from point A to point B, from China to the United States, they're different places, right? But beyond the surface level, it's vital to know that all places are the same presence, which means if I were to fly to China, fly to America, fly to Mars, that same presence that was with me here will be with me in China, in America, on Mars. Doesn't matter, because these places only exist in the mind. We don't need to communicate that they're separate, but we do, so we can talk and function and communicate together. But we must understand that these places are not the words. These places are the mind. There is no place. But once you start talking like this, people lose their mind. They don't know, well, how am I supposed to exist here? How can I still exist here if there is no place? I do it every day. I work at Home Depot. There is no place, though. So I don't separate my home from my job and my job from my home. That's what I mean by places. So the job will deplete you and your energy because you're in a different place than your home. You're more comfortable in your home. You're more free in your home. Well, why is that? Because the presence that fills my home is the presence that fills my workspace, my job. It does not leave me. Which means if I'm depressed at work, I'll be depressed at home. If I'm depressed at home, I'll be depressed at work, because it is the presence that is following you, because the presence is everywhere. It's everything. It's every place. You're not traveling. You are the immovable presence itself. And again, that is how you ground yourself in times of chaos. When COVID erupts or when a government issues martial law, ground yourself in this presence, in this moment right now. When you know yourself to your core, you can shoot me, you can harm me, you can lash at my skin, you can beat me, it does not matter. Just like Jesus Christ, you can beat him to a bloody pulp. You will never penetrate into the core of this presence, into the core of my being. And that is why this man sat there and let them torture him. That is why monks will not physically fight another being, because there is no other being. And they have already experienced the literacy of this. It's not a belief. It's not something that they have to put forth effort to believe. It's known to the core of their being with all literacy. You are me. This is not a belief. This is not something I need to practice. This is not something I need to chant a mantra to know. No. When you know, you know. And there is no unlearning of this knowledge here. Because again, it cannot be changed. It cannot be influenced by surface level activities. It cannot be penetrated into. It is the immovable presence that everyone is seeking. Through a different word, through a different form, through a different thing. It's veiled from all of us. However, we're all looking for it. Home. But home is nowhere, because this presence is all-pervading. It's everywhere. There's nowhere this presence will not be. There's nowhere you can go that this presence is not, because you are not who you assume to be. You are the presence first and foremost. Before you are Tyler describing the country you're from or your description of body, you must be a presence first.